I learned a new word this week. The word is refugia. Refugia is a biological term that refers to places of shelter where life endures in times of crisis. From these small sanctuaries, life reemerges and ecosystems are renewed. Amid seemingly all-consuming wildfires, for example, pockets of vegetation somehow survive. Seeds underground persevere and then open anew. Creation continually reveals its creative resilience in the face of powerful disruptions. On one of my walks this week, I scanned the tremendous burn area of the Eaton fire above Altadena with my binoculars, and I found refugia, pockets of green growing among the ashes. Seeing them stirred within me a wordless prayer of hope for all still enduring the loss of loved ones and homes, businesses and livelihoods, and stirred a prayer of hope for all of us amid the near constant convergence of crises today. In her marvelous work, Refugia Faith, Deborah Rienstra considers how faith communities can function like refugia. Small sanctuaries of people committed to sheltering others, helping life to endure, and then reemerge renewed. In a culture of rugged individualism and its accompanying loneliness, these communities insist that we are completely interdependent, never meant to do life alone. In a culture and government increasingly hostile toward women and our trans siblings and any that don't sit atop a virulently reinforced caste hierarchy in this country, infrastructures of holiness and wholeness affirm the dignity of all instead and move to guard any who is dehumanized. A church of refugia resists becoming the church of empire, which is concerned only with seizing more and more power, wielding it as a weapon instead of a responsibility, and forcing conformity to a narrow worldview and tolerating little else. Instead, these communities ponder their own proclivity toward power and imagine new models of shared power among all. If fascism, to quote Gareth Higgins, is the belief that some lives are worth more than others at the expense of everyone else's life, then the antidote is acting on the belief that everyone is equally worthy of love. Such a belief calls forth the mutual service of an ever-expanding loving relationship with all things, in which we would learn to stretch ourselves to serve one another's needs without denying our own, so that everyone can flourish. Our posture toward one another would be nothing less than asking of everyone we meet, how can I help make their life more whole? This is the consistent posture of Jesus throughout the Gospels, including the story of Bartimaeus we shared this morning. On a street outside of Jericho, outside of organized life where people live in community and have what they need, Jesus creates a refugium for one whose visual impairment is perhaps the reason he is marginalized and forced to beg on the side of the road. The biblical scholar David Brown suggests that the often overlooked miracle in the healing stories of Jesus is that Jesus sees. Jesus notices those whom others, like the crowd surrounding Bartimaeus that day, would silence, ignore, and pass by. What the crowd perceives as a tangent at best and unworthy of Jesus' time at worst, Jesus makes priority. How Mark intimates the irony is so good. Those on the road with Jesus, those closest in proximity, failed to understand what Jesus is all about, while the one on the outside, sitting in the dust alongside the road and visually impaired, recognizes clearly God's unfolding restorative love in Jesus. It is only when Jesus pays attention to Bartimaeus' cries that the people pay attention. Jesus' compassion has this ripple effect. It spreads and stirs in the people like a wordless prayer of hope. Do not be afraid, they implore Bartimaeus. Get up, Jesus is calling you. The image of Bartimaeus leaving his cloak, his most treasured and perhaps only possession, moves me. A symbolic shedding of an old life whose isolated reality had finally come to an end. He runs toward the new, fully embraced by a love that notices and calls each of us by our true names, a love that becomes real through the embrace of this itinerant sanctuary of people, refugia. As Bartimaeus is healed, so is the community. The story is a metonym for Jesus' ministry, which sought to reveal and heal our spiritual misperceptions. To avoid ableist language, we might say that the holy helps reveal unexamined ways we hinder God's intended fullness for our lives and others' lives. Jesus prods these revelatory moments with a liberating, albeit disruptive question, the same he asks of Bartimaeus. What do you want me to do for you? For love to be truly love, it won't insist upon our path, but simply invite us to it. Ask us to articulate where we long for and are willing to welcome love's transforming power in our lives. And love is never not inviting us. I want to see, replies Bartimaeus. We may find our answers rhyme at the beginning of this season of Lent. We want to better understand ourselves, perceive more clearly our own ways of being, more honestly grasp how we unintentionally harm ourselves and others. We want to more fully experience and trust that we are seen and known in our fullness and loved fully, and be reminded that love is our true home, and there is nothing we can do or nothing we have done that makes that any less true. Lent is a season of introspection that sets a place for us at the tables of our lives as we anticipate where new life might take root. But maybe we resist because we've not pulled up a chair for so long that doing so feels like entering a long abandoned dining room, sheets covering all the furniture and dust covering all the sheets. We may conclude the work required for healing is too disruptive, what might be revealed too painful. So another year, another layer of dust. But what if we got in the dust, remembering all the holy can do with it, to echo Jan Richardson? There are refugia in every soul, sheltering life and waiting for our cue that it is safe to reemerge again. What are we willing to risk for new life, even transformation? Can we imagine a feast waiting? Maybe we resist this Lent's invitation because our place at the table is comfortable. We know Jesus was a holy troublemaker who both figuratively and literally turned over tables so that the upside-down realm of God might hasten a kinder, fairer reality that takes seriously how we organize life so that no one is left out or pushed out or kept out. Yes, Jesus dined at the tables of the wealthy and powerful too. But there at those tables always held life's most persistent question before them, echoed later by Dr. King. What are we doing for others with all we have? For those not yet welcome at our tables, or who have no table at which to sit. Are we willing to imagine life from the edges as the new center, from where and to where the holy is calling us? Kathy Escobar, from whose book we borrow our Lenten series title, writes, "Without intentional efforts to wander beyond our own perspectives, it is easy to believe that we have the only way, or at least the only right way, of understanding things. To those with it, power's presence is easily missed, making it harder to grasp our participation in and perpetuation of unequal systems that benefit us and the biases that keep other stories from being told. A first move in understanding power, then, as Jesus did, Escobar suggests, is making efforts to understand others' experiences fully. How differences from heteronormative white identities are demonized and then made to justify unequal treatment. We continue to ask hard questions and learn history we'd rather forget, and how that history keeps rhyming in all of our present crises so that a new story might be written. In other words, we stop trying to sit at tables Jesus would have flipped and set a new table. This Lent, we are intentionally speaking of the personal and the political, recognizing an inescapable truth that the personal choices we make are always political, and the political, in turn, is always personal. To live as if these were two distinct realms, is to buy the lie of individualism that we are all islands and not inherently interrelated. I think about how frustrated I get in traffic in our beloved city. You would not believe some of the things that come out of my mouth while driving. Or maybe you would. But something obvious, yet obscured, was revealed in my mind recently. I'm traffic too, as much as every other car on the highway that resembles more of a parking lot right now. My presence to others is just as frustrating as theirs is to me. This truth works on me, softens me some, makes me kinder. So I let someone merge, or wonder about someone's life, extend grace for why they might be so distracted or in a hurry and tailgating me relentlessly. What I want to say is this life is a life we influence and shape together. My lens is not partisan. My lens is the moral clarity of love, which Jesus suggests informs the decisions we make. In a world where one of the highest unelected officials in our land claims that the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy, we wade in the wake of Jesus' compassion, letting it stir our empathy instead and take us to roadsides where attention, noticing, and love are needed. An empathy void is almost always filled by cruelty. In a world being remade safe for the authoritarian thriving of the ruthless, as conservative columnist David Brooks wrote this week, We instead keep turning over those tables and insisting on a world where the vulnerable and marginalized find the healing of refuge. Reverend Tracy Blackman said this week that America has not become, America has been revealed. As painful as that truth is, we remember that only when something is revealed and brought into the full light of truth can anything be healed. One of my own in this Lenten season will be to challenge the addiction to my drug of choice, which is self-righteously knowing who I'm better than. Whew. That is hard to admit aloud. Reverend Julian de Chazier wrote this week, "Supremacy's ethics are universal, and its aim is all-consuming. It doesn't matter if you're, quote, one of the good ones," end quote. Supremacy feels good enough on the inside to make all of us vulnerable to its sirens. It feels good to be certain that we are right and they are wrong and therefore must be defeated. It feels good to be sure we are on the right side of history, but we will not beat white supremacy with more supremacy, not even the good Christian kind. A Lenten call for disrupting power begins in each one of us. I kept thinking this week about how Jesus didn't overthrow Rome, but gathered a small, resilient community around a common table, teaching them how to love fiercely, resist injustice nonviolently, and care for the least among them. Isn't that how transformation always begins? Not from the top down, but from the ground up. Ordinary people refocusing their spiritual vision, choosing connection over chaos, truth over convenience, and courage over complacency. Jesus, Refugia Maker, gathers the community in that helps life endure and reemerge again, stronger, braver, a little more healed. So we enter Lent. Get in the dust together, beloved Refugia, to remember what it's all about, anticipate all that it would reveal to us, and even find some new shoots of life again among the ashes. Amen.